Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block and today's segment of First Home Alliance. I'm your host, Larry Laws, here to share with you the great things First Home Alliance is doing and to answer any questions you may have to empower you with the knowledge to help you make your dream of homeownership a success. On today's episode of First Home Alliance, we will be focusing on loan closing. This is where all the elements of your mortgage purchase transaction are put on the table and settled. It can be an celebration, and it also can be the beginning of something new. For today's episode, we have a special guest. He has been licensed as an attorney for over 30 years. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience. He has litigated matters before the courts in Virginia, the District of Columbia, and Maryland. Presently, he serves as the managing attorney with MBH Settlement Group in Woodbridge, Virginia. He is here today to talk and also walk us through the loan closing. Please welcome to our show, David Phil.
Thanks, Larry.
Hey,
How are
David.
you?
I'm doing just
Good.
fine. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Yes.
Glad to be here.
All right. I would like for you to basically tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I was born in Washington, D.C., grew up in Arlington, just down the road. Attended public school my whole life in Virginia, went to the University of Virginia, graduated from George Mason Law School. I was a prosecutor in Fairfax County, this county, for 3 years. Was in private practice for about 10 years. Worked for an insurance company for several years, and for the past 10 years I've worked at MBH Settlement Group doing real estate settlements.
Okay. Well, that's great. And that's what we're going to talk about here, the loan closing. And so real estate, is it really important for individuals to use a settlement company, or is it something they can actually go to any attorney?
No, you really, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk over you. You really can't just go to any attorney, because when you purchase a home, you need a settlement and escrow company. They're usually called title and escrow or settlement companies because they sell title insurance.
Okay.
And lenders require that title insurance be purchased when individuals purchase homes. So just your general attorney is not going to be set up to sell that kind of insurance or provide that service.
Okay. But there are, I think here in Virginia, some people say, well, I could go to an attorney. And so what are some of the reasons why they would go to an attorney other than just for settlement?
Well, generally, I'm not sure I recommend people don't necessarily need to go to attorneys for a real estate transaction.
Okay.
Sometimes people get fearful and they feel like they may need an attorney. There's really no reason for that necessarily, in my opinion.
Okay.
But generally, what will happen generally is that the buyer's realtor will recommend a title or escrow or settlement company for them, some of which will have attorneys in their office like myself.
Okay.
Some will have what's called licensed title agents, who are people who have taken a test which permits them to conduct real estate settlements, but they're not attorneys.
Okay. And I understand there's one definition of a title, and I understand sometimes it's called a title when people talk title, but also they have escrow agents. What's the difference between the title and the escrow?
Well, it's one of those things that's, I suppose, gotten kind of murky because it just depends. Some companies, like, there are certain settlement companies that are called ABC Title and Escrow. Mm-hmm. There are some settlement companies that are just called, like mine, MBH Settlement Group.
Okay.
They're essentially the same thing because a title company is a company that's authorized and licensed to issue title insurance, and an escrow company is a company that's been set up and has the proper insurance and the proper bank accounts to escrow funds, meaning holding funds for dispersal after settlement.
Okay.
So there's virtually the same thing.
Okay. Yes. But you don't actually sell title, do you?
No.
You don't sell title.
Title, that's a word that people get very confused about.
Okay.
In terms of what is title, especially with real estate.
Correct.
Because most people, when they think of title, they think of the title of their car. And so people will frequently ask me, when do I get my title? Mm-hmm. I could go into that later in terms of what that really means in terms of that. But basically, they're thinking that somehow some document is going to be issued to them that says you own this house, which it is, but it's a deed. Okay. But we don't sell title as such. What we really sell, I suppose, quote unquote, is title insurance, which every settlement and escrow, title and escrow company does.
Yes. And could you tell us a little bit about that title insurance? Who does it cover?
Sure. Title insurance, when you buy a house, when you purchase a home, your lender requires that you purchase title insurance for them.
Okay.
And title insurance for the buyer is highly recommended but not required. What title insurance does is it insures the investment, first of all, of course, of the lender, because they've loaned you money to buy the house, so it insures their investment, the dollars they've sunk into your house. Plus, of course, it would insure your investment if you were the owner in the event, hopefully unlikely, that some defect in title were discovered after settlement, or some lien were discovered, or there was some after discovered issue with the title that was not discovered at the time you purchased it, and someone then may make a claim against your real estate for one reason or the other because maybe they had a lien that wasn't paid off or a judgment that wasn't paid off, or it's like, Uncle Joe's long lost, sister who suddenly comes forward and says, I own part of this house that you bought after Uncle Joe died. So that's what it kind of protects against.
Yes. But I do understand sometimes, a first-time home buyer maybe, they're trying to save money.
Sure.
And they're trying to, cut, some things off. Has there ever been a situation where there's maybe that we're having title insurance that you can share with our audience that was actually needed and used?
Fortunately, it's not that frequently used, simply because most title companies, title insurance is issued by a title insurance company, obviously. Okay. They have underwriters. Those are people who look at things and say, we will or will not insure this property. In order to get a property insured, you have to have someone either who you hire as an independent contractor who might be in-house who actually does a title search for you.
Okay.
Most title insurance issuers require a 60-year search for title insurance. And what that means is they do a search back in land records 60 years back from the present day to make sure there's no defects. Now, if there are defects, we either try to remedy those or somehow resolve them. But in terms of actually people having title insurance that kicks in, I think that the only example I can think of, which is not one I personally knew about, but one I heard about, where a gentleman in Fairfax sold his property to a developer and had his wife's name forged on all the documents, selling the property to the developer. And then once they started building townhouses there, the real wife showed up and laid a claim to every house in the subdivision.
Okay.
So every one of those people's title insurance had to kick in because this was a lady who said, I have an interest in the property, and I didn't sell it. Yes. So that's the worst case scenario, which fortunately does not happen very much.
Yes. And I understand that you also do some classes and presentations. What are some of those things, what you do?
Well, I personally do that. Of course, at least once a month, I teach for First Home Alliance for the VHDA, or Virginia Housing Development Authority, required class for people who are getting loans from the VHDA.
Correct.
I also teach in-house in my office to realtors, classes about everything related to real estate. I have taught also at the Prince William County, I can't think of the name, Prince William County Realtors Association. I've taught classes for them for many years. I was teaching classes to them. So I've taught a lot of classes to realtors, both at the Realtors Association in Prince William County as well as through my own office. Okay. And I, of course, go to realtors' offices to teach them as well.
Yes. Have you experienced, for the homeowners that come into your office for a settlement, those that may have had some prior education, first-time homebuyer education, that are aware of some of the documents versus those that have not?
Yes. I mean, it's always helpful for people to have gotten some education before they come in, because it's people do have a lot of misconceptions about how these things, how the transactions take place, how they flow. Lots of times lenders will send them an entire package of documents that they're going to see at settlement before settlement. Now, a lot of people don't look at those.
Right.
It helps that they look at them because, of course, then once they see them at settlement, they're not completely taken aback by them. I do try, when I do settlements, to obviously explain every document thoroughly and make sure people understand it. But there are a lot of misconceptions out there. I mean, the most frequent misconception is when people are through settlement within an hour, they usually say, "Gee, people told me it takes several hours to do this." I'm like, "Not in my office," but
Yes, yes. Now, I talk to first-time homebuyers about building a team.
Right.
How would a person, and when would a person actually reach out for that settlement company? When is that actually? When do it come into the process?
Well, under Virginia law, the purchaser has the right to select the settlement agent or the title company that they use. And that is, in my mind at least, primarily because it's their loan that is being settled.
Correct.
It's their documentation to be going through. So basically, and it's their money that's being dispersed
Correct.
by the settlement company. So the settlement's really all about the purchaser to some degree. So they have the right to select. Now, the way it usually works is because the purchaser has the right, generally I think the realtor will usually ask the purchaser, even a first-time home buyer, well, do you have any place you particularly like to settle? Which, of course, they've never bought anything, so they don't know. So usually the realtor will recommend somebody, but the realtor will recommend them always, of course, because there's somebody who they've done settlements with before. They trust the way they do their settlements. They trust that they'll get the job done. So a realtor recommendation is usually solid in terms of recommending someplace to have a settlement done.
Okay.
And that's usually how they first get into that, but generally most buyers don't have a lot of connection with the title company until they actually step forward to settlement.
Okay. And there's an insurance piece. When is the, in reference to the homeowner's insurance?
Okay.
Is that something that they should look at prior to, the loan coming to settlement, or is that something you introduce to them?
No, we really don't have anything to do with that, and that is all set up, and like I say, obviously if it's a first-time home buyer, they've never bought homeowners insurance. They may have car insurance. It's been a long time since I bought my first home, but I pretty much left it up to my realtor and my lender to track down somebody to get homeowners insurance for me, which, which was a company, which I won't do an advertisement for them, but it's a well-known company. If a first-time home buyer has insurance with any of the big companies that offer homeowners insurance, they can always contact them, because also, among the other things you have the right to choose, is a buyer has the absolute right to choose who their insurance agent is.
Okay. We're going to come back to that insurance.
Okay.
Okay. And what it is right now, we're coming up on a break. You did mention about education. We're about to take a break. And before we go, I would like to encourage our audience to attend a first-time homebuyer class early in the home buying process, where the loan closing is one of those things one of those areas that is covered. The first-time homebuyer class will help you to make better, well-informed decisions when purchasing your first home. First Home Alliance is one of the HUD-approved housing counseling agencies in Northern Virginia. You can also find other HUD-approved housing counseling agencies in your area that conduct classes free of charge by searching the HUD website at www.hud.gov. We'll be right back after the break with more on loan closing. Stay tuned.
Start living the dream of home ownership with help from First Home Alliance. Free orientation classes are held the third Saturday of each month from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and lunch will be served. Classes include topics like personal finance, credit issues, the lending process, the role of the agent, home inspection, and loan closing. Don't wait. Call First Home Alliance today to register or go to firsthomealliance.org for more information and start your dream of home ownership today.
Welcome back. You're watching Rock Your Block, today's segment of First Home Alliance with our special guest, David Phil. David,
yes, sir.
Before the break, we were talking about insurance. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the insurance?
Yes, quickly. When you're talking about insurance as a settlement, there's, I guess, three parts. First of all, there's, of course, your homeowner's insurance, which you have the right to select under law. Your lender can't tell you who to buy it from. You can buy it from anybody you want. And that is the thing that the homeowner needs to set up in advance. Their lender and their loan officer will help them do that if they're having trouble doing that. The other one, of course, is title insurance, which is insurance for your title in case there's any claims against it. That's one thing we provide as a settlement company, which is purchased at the time of settlement.
Okay.
Last thing, insurance may be people have private mortgage insurance, what's called PMI.
Okay.
If you have a federally insured loan, and depending on a lot of factors, credit and things of those nature, you might have to also pay what's called private mortgage insurance on your loan, meaning that essentially what you're doing is you're buying insurance so that if you default on your loan, your lender has an insurance company that's going to pay them the amount you owe them because you've defaulted on the loan. And that is set up through your lender, and that's already in part of your loan. It's nothing we have anything to do with, but that is something you will, as a buyer, undoubtedly know about before you even come to settlement.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with our audience in reference to the insurances. There's another insurance that I'm thinking about also, is that mortgage life insurance sometime homeowners may ask about.
Yeah, mortgage life insurance would be a private insurance policy that you purchased that would provide insurance to pay off your mortgage in the event you died or became permanently disabled.
Okay.
That's not something that goes through the settlement company or even through your lender. That would be something that a purchaser would have to find an insurance agent for and sign up for that insurance themselves, of course, after they purchase the house.
Okay. Yes. And I know that time is moving here. You have a wealth of information.
See what we can do.
Yes. What I want to do is go to the closing.
Sure.
And let's talk about the settlement day.
Okay.
What can we expect when we go for settlement?
Well, rapidly, I'll try to do this basically. First of all, of course, most people will do their walkthrough before settlement. Walkthrough is where you purchase the home, and before you go to settlement, you will go through the home one more time to make sure it is in the same condition as when you last saw it.
Yes.
And then you will drive from that walkthrough probably to settlement.
Okay.
I try to recommend, it's not done very often, but I certainly recommend that people do the walkthrough the day before settlement.
Okay.
Simply because if there are issues found there, then they at least have 24 hours to try and negotiate those issues, because issues do arise sometimes, more frequently than I would like, but they do arise, and at least that gives you that window. Yes. If you go to do your walkthrough that very morning and then rush over to settlement and you have an issue, the seller might not even be there, because lots of times the sellers are already moved and they're out of state, so it's better to do it in advance.
Okay.
Then on the settlement day, you come to the settlement company. We will already have had your HUD ready. HUD document is it's called a HUD 1,
okay.
Which is essentially the document, and people can once again take a look at that on the HUD website.
Okay.
They have a sample HUD 1 you can look at in case you don't know what that is. The HUD 1 sets forth the financial part of the transaction. It will show all the charges to the buyer. Lots of times buyers don't realize that the price of the house is just not the price of the house, it's the price of the house plus all the other closing costs you have to pay, which are lender fees and taxes of that nature. We will review the HUD with the purchaser, go through their costs, then we will go through any credits they've received. They may have gotten a closing cost credit from the seller or some other credits from their lender or something. We'll go through the credits, and then of course they have a bottom line, which is the funds that they need to bring to closing, which has to be in a form of a cashier's or certified check.
Okay.
Then, of course, we will just start going through the documents. And the documents, a lot of people are kind of concerned, I think, these days, at least people who may have been paying attention, because a lot of bad loans went through back in 2004, 5, and 6. We don't have those anymore, especially first-time home buyers. Most of the loans I'm closing, as you are aware, are FHA or VA loans. FHA loans, there's nothing sexy about them. They're 30-year fixed, fixed interest rate. There's no prepayment penalty or any kind of penalties like that. We'll go through the documents. We go through the note, which is the promise to pay back the money they owe. We'll go through what's called a deed of trust, which puts a lien on the property for the lenders, so they can't sell it without paying for it.
Okay.
There'll be some IRS documents in there, some other things in there, but basically it's all standard. There's nothing tricky or real complicated about that. I mean, like I say, I can do a settlement in an hour and have completely explained to the buyer everything that's going on. And then, of course, they get the keys in their house at the end of that process.
Okay. I want to get back up to the HUD 1.
Sure.
Yes. And if you could explain some of the things that are actually on the back of that HUD 1 and then it transfer over to the
Now, of course, this is going to change next year, which is going to be very exciting, because next year the HUDs are going to be about 5 pages long or something.
Yes.
Right now they're essentially 2 pages.
Okay.
The front, which is where all how much the price of the house is and everything, but on the back is where the charges are.
Okay.
So on the back, I start on the back. The first charges you'll see are basically, as a buyer, you'll see any lender fees, loan origination fee, appraisal fee, tax service fees to pay the people that monitor payment of your real estate taxes. Like I said, appraisal. If there's a flood certification fee, they always pull a flood certificate to make sure you're house is not in a flood zone.
Okay.
Then you have what are called prepaids. Those are things you have to pay in advance, which of course you have to buy a first year of homeowners insurance. You pay that in advance.
Okay.
You also pay interest in advance for the remainder of the month in which you're going to live in the house. So for instance, if you settle today, you'd pay interest from today through the end of March.
Okay.
And then that would make your April 1st payment because you pay interest in arrears. So that means when you pay on April 1st, you're paying March's interest.
Okay.
So that would make your April 1st payment, so you wouldn't have a payment until May, which seems pretty good. Most people think they're living for free. I always tell them they're not, but in any event. So you have your prepaids. Then you have your charges to the title company, which are basically a settlement fee and a processing fee. There's also the title insurance fee for both buyer and lender.
Okay.
Then there's what's called the grantee's tax. The grantor is the person selling.
Okay.
The grantee is the person receiving title to property. The grantee's taxes are standard in Virginia. So those are paid as well. And then any other thing that you're paid, for instance, if there's a survey done of the property, that will be collected on the back of the HUD. If there's a pest inspection, if the buyers agreed to pay for that, that'll be in their section. So any other charges that they might have will either go in the seller's column or the buyer's column. And then at the bottom of that is, on the bottom line, is their closing costs. That's actually what their closing costs are, the total of all the charges on the back.
Yes.
Then-
Now,
Go ahead.
as a buyer, would I be able to see that prior to the closing day?
You know, hopefully you should, but
Okay.
you know, the problem is the issue becomes when the title company gets the lender instructions. We cannot prepare a HUD 1 until we get instructions from the buyer's lender, because a lot of the numbers, obviously all the loan numbers, the origination fees, all the lender fees, are given to us by the lender. So until we get lender instructions, we cannot prepare a final HUD.
And as a first-time home buyer, when should I expect to have the HUD?
Hopefully you can get it the day before.
Okay.
Technically, under the law, I think you're supposed to have it 3 days before, but
Yes.
unfortunately, we don't get loan instructions 3 days in advance of settlements. Usually we get them either the day before, we might get them 2 days before, but we do try to provide that as soon as we can, but obviously we can't do it until the lender provides us with their documentation.
Okay. And you were speaking, you was back on the front side of that
Sure.
HUD, and you was talking about that bottom line there.
Sure. So we flip the HUD over, and on the front, left-hand side is the buyer's side. Up at the top is all the funds that the buyer owes, and then below that are the credits to the buyer. So, so the charges would be like the sales price of the house. If there's a homeowners association, they're going to have to pay the seller back for any fees that the owner is paid, which are now the liability of the buyer.
Correct.
They're going to probably pay the next month's homeowner's dues. So if you settle today, we would collect the remainder of March from you, plus we would collect April. So then both your first mortgage payment, your first homeowner's dues payment would be due May.
Okay.
Lots of times the homeowners associations have a transfer fee. They charge $50 to $100 to establish your account. So the total of the sales price plus all those charges become what you need to pay.
Okay.
And then we credit the buyer with their earnest money deposit that they made with the contract. We credit them, obviously, with their loan proceeds. Very frequently now, sellers are giving buyers what's called closing cost credits, which is amount of money that they're saying, I will offer you to defer some of your closing costs.
Okay.
Then there will be a tax proration, because taxes are collected twice a year. So generally when the seller sells, they're going to give the buyer a credit for the taxes that they owe. And then the buyer will, of course, pay that money out of their escrow account when taxes are due. The people that monitor their taxes will pay that. They don't usually have to pay that directly. So after you take everything you owe and then every credit you've gotten, down at the bottom of the HUD will be a cash to close, essentially. And cash to close shouldn't be cash. It has to be in the form of a cashier's check. The real estate contract says it will be a cashier's check. And the reason it's a cashier's check is because those are what's called available funds. Or they're called what do we call them in there? They're good money. In other words, if you give me a check, that's just a promise to pay. That's just a direction from you to tell the bank to pay me. Now, you might stop payment on that check, but a cashier's check, we know that's good money because we need to have all the money that we need at the time of settlement. We can't be waiting for a check to clear.
Okay.
So that's why it has to be a cashier's check. And generally, just as a bit of information, if someone is buying a house and they're getting an FHA loan, with an FHA loan, you have to have 3.5% in the transaction.
Okay.
So generally, if you were buying a house for $250,000, and you were going to get an FHA loan, and you said to me, how much should I need to bring to the table to settle? I would say, Larry, multiply $250,000 times 3.5, and that's the money you're going to need.
7,000.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't do the math that quick, but I'll trust you.
Yes. Okay. And also, will you be able to accept a check, a personal check, just in case the numbers do not match?
We will accept a personal check for anything less than $1,000 because the bank doesn't hold those.
All right. Okay. David, we're about 2 minutes before our closing. And before we close, I would like to thank you for coming on to our show.
My pleasure.
Yes, and I would like to welcome you back again. The invitation is there.
My pleasure as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, David. I hope that our guest today, David, has answered many of your questions on loan closing. If you have any additional questions related to loan closing, please contact David Phil at MBH Settlement Group. Next, I would like to share with you a question from our inbox. This is where we share questions sent to us from our viewing audience in reference to housing and financial education as it relates to homeownership. Today's question comes from Arlington, Virginia. The question is, what is the best way to improve my credit score? There are 5 factors that make up the FICO score: payment history, amount owed, type of credit, length of credit history, and request for new credit. The factor that carries the most weight is the payment history. So to improve your score, you must establish a good track record of paying your credit obligations on time. Also, I would like to remind you to pull your free credit report annually by visiting annualcreditreport.com. If you have any questions concerning financial education or homeownership, simply email your question to our inbox at help@firsthomealliance.org. And tune in to our show next time to see if your question was selected to be shared with our audience. If you want to find out more about our services, visit our website. Thank you for watching Rock Your Block and today's segment of First Home Alliance. I'm Larry Laws, reminding you that we're here to empower you with the knowledge to help you successfully live the dream of homeownership.